Or is it just recording now? All right, it's recording. Okay. I want to tell you all badly enough that it was a dark and stormy night. But it kind of does a disservice to the fact that not only was it a December night on a weekend where it was bitter cold and blowing snow, and the fact that I was in college and I was about to not be in college. I had been a German major at Shippensburg University, and I was in fact actually about to be expelled for not deciding to go to class after a couple months into the term. There are choices that we make and they're not always good. I had just told my friends, mostly guys in my fraternity, that I was not going to be back the next term. And it felt good to have that off my chest, but it also kind of made a lead balloon for them to carry around for the rest of the evening. We usually started off at a happy hour and then wound up at the fraternity house, you know, rolling around in whatever cases of beer or kegs followed us in. This one night, I just started feeling a social distance with my good friends that I had just told I'm not going to be here, and I felt really uncomfortable, and it was probably also good and sloshed. So one of my roommates was there. I gave him my car keys, and I said, I'm going to walk back to the apartment. Do me a favor whenever you come back, just bring my car back with you if you are capable of driving, I guess. So I headed out of the fraternity house. There was about 6 to 8 inches of new fallen snow on the ground, and probably had about a 2-3 mile walk ahead of me. I didn't mind. I walked a whole lot. I was a college student. You end up having to walk miles between classes anyway. Anyway, I went out of the fraternity house. I went down Bird Street. Took a left down Queen Street, and in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, if you look up Shippensburg University and Queen Street, at the end of Queen Street, you will see an area where Queen Street ends and where the campus begins, labeled the Goat Path. I had heard of the Goat Path before I went to Shippensburg. There was a gal that I dated who went there years before I did, and her first term at Shippensburg, she fell down the goat path and broke both of her legs. The Goat Path was a steep slope that was kind of muddy from students trotting on it up and down, followed by a little railroad bed, followed by another steep muddy bank. So I'd walked 4 or 5 blocks down Queen Street towards the Goat Path, and then I finally came down there and I thought, oh, why did I come this way? And I looked at the Goat Path, and I thought about how far I had to go back behind me to go back to the party that I had just made sort of a dramatic exit to, you know, that kind of didn't feel like going back. And I figured, it's not that far from here so I would brave the Goat Path. You know, it's all of like 30 feet long, but still it can be kind of treacherous. So,
she never got her coat.
Oh, okay, it's probably at the counter.
with the snow on the ground,
Thank you.
Yeah, drinks and pastries come up at the counter.
Thank you.
Anybody else waiting on anything?
good.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
With the snow on the ground, I figured I'm just going to stomp on the snow and just going to compress, and that'll give me all the leverage I need to get up the hill. So that was true for maybe 3/4 of the way up the Goat Path, but as I found a little muddy spot, I started sliding backwards. And being that I was nice and comfortable from all the happy hour and party drinking that I'd been doing, I started sliding backwards down the Goat Path, and remembering what happened to my ex-girlfriend, I decided, hey, I know what to do sliding downhill. I just kind of turned a little bit and started sliding, you know, like surfboard style down the hill, which went great until I found a little rock, maybe this big underneath, and I sprained the bejesus out of one of my ankles and went tail over tea kettle down the rest of the Goat Path. So I was frightened and in pain, and there I was with one really badly sprained ankle, and in the same position as the party I was when I was down at the bottom of the goat path before. Do I go back to this party that I kind of left with purpose, or do I go up that goat path? And being that I had enough invincibility fluid taken in beforehand, I decided.
That was mine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I decided
What
she was drinking a Coke. I decided that, by God, I'm going up the goat path. So, on my sprained ankle, I got a running start and made it up the goat path. At which point, I don't know what time it was at night, but it was the end of the term, and it was a quiet night. If you know what snowfall is like, there's this blessed silence unless you're in pain and hoping another human being is going to come by. But it was a little bit more desolate. So I was hoping, I was hoping to see a campus cop car come by, or or just somebody coming back from a party that I knew, and to be like, please. But that wasn't the case. I was probably 1.25 miles from my apartment, and I ended up hopping on one foot for a good long while before I had to stop and catch my breath. And when you're not used to hopping over distance, it just doesn't go for that long. And then so it was cold enough that I didn't really want to stop, so I tried taking a couple steps on the other ankle, and that wasn't so cool. So I just had to stop and stand still for a while, and then start hopping again. But eventually, I started getting close to my apartment. Now, across the street from my apartment, fortunately, was the student medical clinic, where there was a 24-hour attendant. There was a bell on the door that you could ring for help, in the middle of the night or on the weekend. And so I hobble over there to the door, and I ring this bell. It was a very memorably industrial-sounding, noisy doorbell. You hit this thing, and then like down the way in the building, you hear this bring, like a fire alarm sound almost, but attached to a doorbell. And I listened, and I could hear a TV on down the hall, but I didn't hear anybody coming, and no one came to the door. So step 2, I rang the doorbell and pounded on the door. Nothing. Step 3, I rang the doorbell, I pounded on the door, and I started shouting and cussing. Around that time, I hear a car starting to pull up.
It's your car.
And it was my car.
Oh my God.
And my buddies were in the car, and for some reason had the windows down. I don't know why. But, and I could hear, through, over the snow, is that Pat? What the fuck is he doing?
Oh.
And they park the car, and they're waiting they see me. I start hopping over to them. They're wondering why I'm hopping. But on my way hopping over to them, I find one of those nice cement things at the end of a parking spot, and I go down, and I sprain the hell out of my other ankle.
Oh.
And
The curse of the goat pass.
Yep.
But I guess I kind of tenderized that other ankle from hopping a mile and a quarter over it. But anyway, the apartment was sort of the entrance to the apartment was outside. There was a little bit of a balcony walkway kind of a thing, and there was also a stairwell that was semi-exposed that the snow had drifted into. And my buddies helped me up the stairs, and we fell 2 or 3 times on the way up before finally getting into the apartment. And I woke up the next morning with a 5-alarm hangover and 2 ankles swollen nice and big. And I started thinking about where I was the night before, thinking, I've let these guys down. They're not happy with me. But when it counted, they kind of had my back. And I was in a good spot. The end.
That was good.
Mary.